blossom with a hot cup to sip. We kicked off our trip where the slow sunset skinny dip. Slowly taking a flight, they got in the moonlight, and you wander all through the night. Well, how do you feel? Well, how do you feel? Like the world is gone out. How do you feel? Like a Calvin Klein. How do you feel? Like everything is near. Do you feel? Like I was born to be here. Do you feel? Oh, feel good. Do you feel? Like a cabin in the woods. Slowly taking a flight, naked in the moonlight, and you wander all through the night. Well, how do you feel? Oh, how do you feel? Like the world is gone. How do you feel? Like a Calvin Klein. Like everything is near. Like I was born to be here. Oh, I feel. How do you feel? Like a cabin in the woods.
Tops flying, trees dropping, and rains falling all day. Cutting up an ugly block the hard way. Quads dying, shoulder crying, waiting on day 4. I don't want to work at kilometer 19 anymore. Loaded on the ice bridge at 5. I gotta get to that old barge one more time. And goddamn me if I'm late on the wrong side. Who's so late? Someone else will be using my place. Ripped orange cork boot, wrinkled right foot blues. You can't tell a bad day by the water in your shoes. White knuckle truck driving, no way to end the day, but it beats the screef out of swimming cold across the lake. Loaded.
Good morning. How's it going?
Hey, what's up?
Whoops.
Hi.
I'm putting the stream in our Black Pride page.
Oh, excellent.
Okay, here we go. Oh my God.
Good to see you this morning.
It's good to be seen. I have had a long week. It was a great week, but it was a long week.
Yeah.
I just put some insecticide on my lawn. and just watch both of the cars. Then I got to go cook because we're having a little picnic over at Avondale Park this afternoon. So, hey, Janae.
It's Janae. Is she? Oh, she's able to talk. Okay, just checking.
Can you hear my fan and my air conditioning in the background?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Janae.
Hey, how's
How you
everybody doing?
We're
I'm
doing good.
laying in bed watching CNN.
No one would have known that had you not said nothing.
That's where I decided I was going to stay this weekend. I'm tired.
Yes. Sounds like Tony's
tired.
making himself tired.
Yeah, Tony's doing the most on a Sunday morning.
Tony's always doing the most.
Hey, Tony, you just doing the most. April's downstairs. She's actually cooking me breakfast.
Yay.
Yeah, well, you just don't know. The last 3 weeks, I mean, I'm tired. I said, please just cook for me, just one time.
How's she doing? How's the her ear and the other stuff going on?
It's going great. She's about to go on back to the cochlear implant doctor, and they're going to schedule her next ear to be done this year.
Wow.
We're talking about maybe next month.
Wow, that's soon. Okay.
Right. That will be her third surgery this year.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot.
That's a whole lot.
Mm.
A whole lot. So I said, okay, I understand. We got to get it all done. And
yeah.
You know, I guess this is why I'm begging her, please just feed me.
Right.
Because it's going to be a whole nother couple of weeks, man.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I'm ready for her to just fully hear,
Mm-hmm.
not worry like she was previously worrying about the other hearing aid getting wet or going away. I'm just very excited about this for her.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Teresa.
Hey, Teresa.
Hey, Teresa.
Good morning.
Hey.
Morning, all.
I'm going to mute myself because I still have the CNN on.
Okay. So earlier when I was streaming some royalty-free music that's about tree planting. It's a bunch of Canadian artists who had it's called Hi Ho, We All Plant Trees. So I thought it was good music to start with earlier. If you're interested, so I wasn't aware of this. If you go to archive.org, that's the Internet Archive, there's a ton of royalty-free music. So apparently you can stream this, and since it's royalty-free, Facebook, I think, won't shut it down if you're playing music. So anyway, I was glad to find
running into that with our drag shows.
Yes. Oh man. Well, yeah. And so you start streaming it, and sometimes even if it is royalty free, they'll shut it down just because it's music, which is anyway. Yeah. So you're in the middle of. I mean, you're in the middle of Black Pride right now? How long does that stretch?
Winding down. Today is the last day.
Okay. So this is the park. That's the picnic at the park.
Yeah. So we got this, and then we got picnic in the park. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
We actually had a really good week, though. I was out of town for most of it, but since it was all virtual anyway, it really didn't really matter for real. But like we had this spoken word thing on Thursday night, Friday night we had the awards banquet and the concert. Last night we had a drag show, and then today, everybody's just gonna meet out in Avondale Park and stay with your group and do what you can.
Well, fantastic. I was out at Avondale Park yesterday. I did online forest and nature therapy, which was interesting, and it was actually kind of cool. And it was nice and cool yesterday morning before it got outrageously hot.
That part.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal out there already. We'll see.
Yeah,
I think
ask me about it.
You're going to be out in the middle of it. Let's see. Who do we have? Everybody on? We don't have Robert yet.
Rob's putting Kira down for a nap.
Oh, good. Okay.
He'll be here in a sec.
Okay. Well, when he logs on, we'll assign him for closed captioning. And so I have changed up the scriptures a little bit today. We're doing a passage from Jonah and a passage from Psalms. So Paula, if I could get you to do, are you there, Paula? Because I haven't seen you yet.
I'm here.
Okay, great. If you can do the Jonah passage, and then Megan Davis, if you would do the Psalm, that would be great.
Sure.
And I think we'll give Rob just a second so we can do closed captioning, and then we'll go. So how the rest of you been? What's your week been like?
Like the 30 previous ones.
Yeah. Oh, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so yeah.
You know what? And it's causing us to change the way that we do language. Like, you can't ask anybody, so what you doing tonight? You sound like Pinky from Pinky in the Brain. Yeah. The same thing we're gonna do every night. Pinky try to take over the world because every day is Wednesday. Every day.
We gotta get the hippo into the tutu.
Right. Like, what are we gonna do? And it's such a part of the way that we communicate with people, and trying to have casual conversation. And it's like we're doing the same thing we did yesterday, like trying not to die. Like that's what we're at right now.
That's so true. That's so very true, man. Hey, Robert.
Hello.
Robert, you're officially more important than the pastor at this point.
That's true.
There's plenty of other people who can talk. You're right.
Not everyone can type the way you type.
Can type though.
So true. So true. That's what I'm wanting, right? The whole point is for me to work myself out of a job so that everyone can do that. Anyone can do this stuff. I appreciate y'all. Well, let's see. Why don't we go ahead and get started? I will get the. Well, I tell you what. Just about anyone could be faster than me at clicking these different buttons and navigating screens. So here we go. I'm very glad to see all of you, by the way. So I'm ready whenever y'all are.
Oh, is that me?
That's you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. In 1940, despite the spread of war in Europe, Robert Schutz crossed the border from Switzerland into France to pursue a community life characterized by simplicity and the fellowship described in the gospel. From early on in his life, Brother Roger knew that such a life together could be a sign of reconciliation for Christians from different denominations. After settling in a French village called Taizé, Brother Roger was caught for hiding Jewish refugees and had to leave France after 2 years. When he returned after World War II had ended, he was accompanied by a few men who became the first brothers of the Taizé community, which grew into an ecumenical community with brothers on all continents, bearing witness to what Brother Roger came to talk about as a parable of community. On August 16, 2005, during evening prayer, the Church of Reconciliation of Taizé and Brother Roger On August 16, 2005, during evening prayer in the Church of Reconciliation at Taizé, Brother Roger was stabbed to death by a mentally ill woman. Also in 1989, a solidarity-led government was elected in Poland, making the beginning of a nonviolent victory over communism in Eastern Europe. Oh Lord, let my soul rise up to meet you.
As the day rises to meet the sun, glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen.
Come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us shout to joy for the rock of our salvation.
Expose our broken systems, Lord. Save us by the power of your cross.
Oh, is that me?
That's you. That's okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
That's no problem, buddy. That's fine.
It's been a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's all right.
Hear, O shepherd of Israel, leading Joseph like a flock.
Shine forth, you are enthroned upon the cherubim.
In the presence of Ephraim, Benjamin, and Manasseh.
Stir up your strength and come to it. Come to help us.
Restore us, O God of hosts.
Show the light of your countenance, and we shall be saved. Expose our broken systems, Lord. Save us by the power of your cross.
As I said, we're going to do, Jonah, and then we'll do Psalms. So Paula, if you would do our Jonah passage.
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
But Jonah thought this was utterly wrong, and he became angry. He prayed to the Lord, "Come on, Lord. Wasn't this precisely my point when I was back in my own land? This is why I fled to Tarshish earlier. I know that you're merciful and compassionate God, very patient, full of faithful love, and willing not to destroy. At this point, Lord, you may as well take my life from me, because it would be better for me to die than to live." The Lord responded, "Is your anger a good thing?" But Jonah went out from the city and sat down east of the city. There he made himself a hut and sat under it in the shade to see what would happen to the city. Then the Lord provided a shrub, and it grew over Jonah, providing shade for his head and saving him from his misery. Jonah was very happy about the shrub. But God provided a worm the next day at dawn, and it attacked the shrub so that it died. Then the sun rose, and God provided a dry east wind, and the sun beat down on Jonah's head so that he became faint. He begged that he might die, saying, "It is better for me to die than to live." God said to Jonah, "Is your anger about the shrub a good thing?" Jonah said, "Yes, my anger is good, even to the point of death." But the Lord said, "You pitied the shrub for which you didn't work and which you didn't raise. It grew in a night and perished in a night. Yet for my part, can't I pity Nineveh, that great city in which there are more than 120,000 people who can't tell their right hand from their left, and also many animals?"
Alongside Babylon's streams, there we sat down, crying because we remembered Zion. We hung our lyres up in the trees there, because that's where our captors asked us to sing. Our tormentors requested songs of joy. "Sing us a song about Zion," they said. But how could we possibly sing the Lord's song on foreign soil? "Jerusalem, if I forget you, let my strong hand wither. Let my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth if I don't remember you. If I don't make Jerusalem my greatest joy. Lord, remember what the Edomites did on Jerusalem's dark day. Rip it down, all the way to its foundations," they yelled. "Daughter Babylon, you destroyer, a blessing on the one who pays you back, the very deed you did to us. A blessing on the one who seizes your children and smashes them against the rock." The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God. Expose our broken systems, Lord. Save us by the power of your cross.
Quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer: "The church's task is not simply to bind the wounds of the victims beneath the wheel, but also to put a spoke in the wheel itself."
Wow, that's a word.
It really is.
Yeah. Thank you all for reading. Excuse me. Thank you all for reading. We'll go into a time of prayer. I'll get us started. And then if you would like to lift up a name or a situation, please feel free to do that. If you're on the Zoom, if you're in Zoom, you are free. You should be able to talk. You can either speak it or you can enter it into the chat if you would prefer, and Angela will read it. If you are tuning in via Facebook or YouTube, I invite you also just to write prayer requests in the comments, and we have people monitoring. My son is monitoring the comments, and Angela will read that out loud as well. If you are tuning in via Facebook or YouTube, I would also ask that you simply like or comment. Let us know maybe where you're watching from. That way we get to count you as being present in worship. That helps us out. So let's go to God in a time of prayer. Gracious and faithful God, one day is like another in so many ways. Sometimes it feels like we're on a merry-go-round. We're tired and stressed, and we're sick and tired of saying that we're tired and stressed. We love you, and we are grateful for every sign of life and healing and grace. We are thankful for the gifts of nature, for the growth of plants in gardens and in parks, and through the cracks of sidewalks. We know, Lord, that we are also such life, whether we are nurtured or whether we have to face obstacles and break through concrete, that life persists. And we are grateful for that dogged tenacity. We are grateful for that life that grows out of death. We ask that you give us times of refreshing, nourishment. We often pray for strength and for courage. Let us also pray for tenderness, for gentleness with ourselves, with each other. Help us to see ourselves with compassion so that we can see others with compassion as well. God, right the wrongs of this world, which we feel so acutely these days. We lift up to you both the things for which we are grateful and the places we desperately ask for your healing and justice. I invite you to share.
Prayers for Michael and Carson Farmer and for Jim Walton.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Sorry, I didn't catch that to type. Can you repeat that?
Prayers.
It broke up there.
Jenny Lawler,
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Harold,
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Jimmy Moore and his upcoming surgery.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Massachusetts.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Rachel Williams,
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Chloe and her family.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Aaron and Justin Potter on what would have been their mother's 62nd birthday.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For all students, teachers, and parents who are going back to school, whatever that looks like.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Bethany Phillips and her father, James.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For the
Josh Williams family.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For the family of Cliff Carlisle, who lost his battle with ALS.
Lord, hear our prayer. I couldn't hear that.
I'm sorry, I was talking with Angela. we were whispering back and forth about prayer concerns.
For Donna Barnhart's sister, Annalie, and her family.
Lord, hear our prayer.
God, for all these that we have named or typed, for the names that we hold in our hearts, for the situations that we don't even know how to put into words, we know that you hear our prayer and that you answer. Lord, oftentimes when our words fail us, we are grateful that we can also pray the prayer that you taught us. I'm going to pray an inclusive version of the Lord's Prayer. Holy One, our Mother and Father, let your name be revered. Let your kingdom come. Let your will be done on earth as it is in the heavens. Give us today the bread that we need for today, and forgive our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial and deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen. So I'm grateful to see all of you today. Wow, whenever I see your faces on the screen, it reminds me of how much I miss being together, being in this living room where I'm sitting now and having people physically around us, or sometimes sitting on the porch and just hanging out. We have our faith, Christianity is an incarnational faith. We talk about God being with us in the flesh, and it's tough not to be in the flesh together, not to be physically present. Last week after worship, those of us who were on Zoom stuck around for a little bit and had a really fruitful conversation about anger. And I wanted to talk a little bit about anger today. We talk a lot about, or we may not talk about, sometimes we talk about the feelings that we have in the midst of this crazy time of pandemic and social upheaval, of sort of the racial reckoning, which in some ways is hopeful but also frustrating to see happening in our society. The ways that inequality are revealed. So as we're praying the liturgy today, praying in common prayer, and it talks about God reveal the systemic and structural evil. I'm like, dang, yeah, okay, it's been revealed. We're good. I mean, because there's so much and it goes so deep. And one of the responses we have to all that is anger. I mean, outrage. You've probably seen the meme or the graffiti that says, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. And it becomes very clear, I think, in this situation that there is a lot of very deep anger in us and in the world. And our faith has sort of an odd relationship with anger. Christianity has not always the healthiest approach to anger, because oftentimes we're taught we shouldn't be angry because anger is a sin. Jesus even said in the Sermon on the Mount, don't be angry because that's like murder. Right? We're going to talk about that in just a minute. We don't necessarily also want to feel angry because being angry feels icky. When I'm angry, my blood pressure goes up. I actually went and had not a physical, but a checkup done at a lab the other day. They took my blood and they did my blood pressure, and surprise, surprise, my blood pressure was the highest it's ever been, even though I'm eating better and exercising and all that other stuff. It's just, I think there's a constant low level simmering rage in me all the time. It raises our blood pressure. It can steal our joy. It can make us feel bad. If you feel anger long enough, you just feel exhausted. We also talk about righteous anger sometimes. We've talked about that righteous anger can be a signal. I mean, God gave us emotions for a reason. And if we're feeling angry, it's a signal that something is wrong and it needs to be fixed. It wouldn't be healthy if we never were angry in a world that's so clearly full of injustice. In social terms, you can almost think of it as an immune response, right? If you think about society or human groups as an organism, something is wrong in society or something's wrong in the group and some people are angry, that's like white blood cells going to fight an infection. There's something wrong that needs to be addressed. So when something affects our society, some of us mobilize, maybe we protest because there's a signal that something is wrong in our society and it needs to be addressed. So I wanted to look at some different examples of anger in the Bible. And what the wisdom that the authors share with us. So the first scripture we heard was from Jonah. This is actually one of my favorite prophet stories because Jonah is a very angry prophet. He's going to Nineveh and he hates Nineveh and he hates Ninevites because of what Nineveh has done. The Assyrian Empire, which was, the capital was in Nineveh, the Assyrian Empire attacked and destroyed Israel. And so the people of Israel and Judah really didn't like Nineveh. So when the author is telling the story and Jonah is told to go to Nineveh and tell them to repent, it's pretty clear that he wants to see God's justice rain down on Nineveh. And he's so furious with this city, he does the minimum amount, by the way. He goes to the city, which the author says is a 3 days hike across. He walks 1 day in, so he doesn't even get to the middle of the city. He says one line, repent or in 40 days Nineveh will be destroyed. He turns around and he walks out. So he does the least amount that he can possibly do, and the whole city repents. They all wear sackcloth and ashes. They even make the cattle wear sackcloth and ashes. And he goes outside waiting for God's justice to rain down, fire and brimstone to fall on the city. He's furious that it doesn't happen. And in this last chapter, he says several times that it's interesting how anger is related to death. He says, I'm angry enough to die. Just kill me. I'm so angry, I just want to die. And it's interesting because that's said like 3 different times. And I think there's an insight here about what anger makes us feel like. It does. It makes us feel icky. Like I would rather not experience this emotion. Now, in this context, God is rebuking Jonah and saying, look, there's a lot of children and even cattle. Like, I'm concerned about the cattle in Nineveh. And I'm the parent to all these human beings, all the people in the city. I'm the one that has grown them. You know, you're mad about this bush over here, but there's thousands of people in this city that I have compassion for. And he's trying to get Jonah to let go. And there's a very Zen quality here. I mean, Jonah's got this problem with attachment, right? He's attached to the bush. He's attached to seeing vengeance done. He can't let it go. And there's a wisdom there about letting things go. We followed that up with Psalm 137, which is the famous song, By the Waters of Babylon, we hung up our harps. And it begins with lament. It begins with this deep grief. And as the psalmist continues, by the end of the poem, the psalmist has turned from grief and sadness and longing for home to fury at those who stood by and did nothing or cheered while their temple was destroyed, and for wishing that the same thing would happen to the Babylonians. Now, this is a sermon I've preached before about how the Psalms are wonderful in that they bring the whole spectrum of human emotion into worship. So even your negative emotions are acceptable to God. Anger, sadness, fury, longing, despair, all of those things that frequently we're told, you shouldn't feel these ways if you're really Christian. If you have faith, you shouldn't feel despair. You shouldn't grieve because everything's temporary. I mean, we're told not to feel certain ways, right, to be Christian. And the Psalms basically say, yeah, whatever, we're bringing it all and laying it on the table before God. So those are two different scriptures. I think there's two different pieces of wisdom there about anger. The scripture that most Christians are familiar with is what Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount. I'm going to go ahead and put this up on the screen because I think this is important to see. Here we go. You've heard that it was said to those who lived long ago, don't commit murder, and all who commit murder will be in danger of judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with their brother or sister will be in danger of judgment. If they say to their brother or sister, you idiot, they will be in danger of being condemned by the governing council. And if they say, you fool, they will be in danger of fiery hell. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift at the altar and go. First make things right with your brother or sister, and then come back and offer your gift. Be sure to make friends quickly with your opponents while you're with them on the way to court. Otherwise, they will haul you before the judge. The judge will turn you over to the officer of the court, and you will be thrown into prison. I say to you in all seriousness that you won't get out of there until you've paid the very last penny. So in this context, Jesus is talking about anger, but there's an important difference between the anger Jesus is talking about here and the anger we heard about from Jonah or from the psalmist. In this one, it's interpersonal anger, right? It's an anger between you and somebody else, someone with whom you have the capacity to make peace, all right? So in other words, either equals or close enough in social status that you can go talk to someone and make peace with them. And I think part of this is how we are to conduct our lives in everyday affairs and the relationships we maintain with people. The problem, I think, in our current situation is that we are oftentimes angry at people we don't have relationships with. And there's not an equal relationship, or there's not a capacity to make peace with someone who is actively involved in perpetuating injustice. So someone I am angry at is John Merrill, Secretary of State of Alabama, who I've been arrested for protesting in his office before, or near his office. I dislike John Merrill. I just can't put it any other way. He is rude on social media. He represents policies I abhor. He is actively disenfranchising people from the vote, refuses to allow released prisoners to know that they can possibly have their voting rights restored. I just don't like the guy. He is a son of a motherless goat. I mean, that's my, Now, I would, if I had the capacity to have a conversation with him, I would probably not open our discussion with, you son of a motherless goat, because I would like the opportunity to have a conversation with him. I know when I had that conversation with him, my blood pressure and heart rate would be up here. But I would be glad to have a conversation with him because I would like for him to hear my point of view. I would like to hear what he has to say. I think I can probably predict, but that is a willingness to be a peacemaker, right? I don't want to kill John Merrill. My greatest hope for him is that he would have a conversion experience. My greatest hope for him was that he would see that disenfranchising people is wrong and that he would come to recognize the error of his ways. And then we could possibly have a conversation about other things, because I'm sure he loves his children. He probably likes going outside and seeing bees visit the flowers just the way I do. I'm sure there are things that humanize us to each other, but I don't have the capacity to do that. In fact, we're living in a situation where I can't even, if I have an interpersonal conflict with someone, I can't even go be with them in person because we might expose each other to danger. So we are actually physically right now limited in how we can make peace. and how we can have interpersonal relationships with each other. And I think one of the insights in the Jesus passage is that these social relationships, the act of peacemaking, actually makes us feel better. Sometimes my wife and I argue. Sometimes we get angry at each other. But when we successfully navigate that, when we come out on the other side, we're actually closer. So there's an awareness, I think, in the Jesus passage that working through anger interpersonally creates peace. It isn't just, oh, well, we've put that negative thing behind us. It's we were angry and now we're on this other side and we've actually grown. It's actually been a positive thing. We're not always in that situation right now in this moment. So a lot of our anger is existential anger. And it's heightened exactly because we can't go and spend time socially with people and have the goodness of humanity affirmed, right? So instead we're forced online, where a lot of our interaction is curated by algorithms that profit from making us angry. So I read an article just this morning by a UAB professor who talked about how she was talking with a colleague, and the colleague simply said, "I miss you." And she wrote about how suddenly she just felt this sob welling up from in her. Her grief and sadness were overwhelming because she was carrying that. And I think a lot of times we're carrying these strong emotions with us, hoping if kind of pushing them to the side and thinking, okay, if I ignore you long enough, maybe you'll go away, right? But something will trigger it, and then it just comes out. I know frequently I'll be doing something, washing dishes or just going about my day, and I'm hit with this wave of sadness, and I just get teary when I think about what I miss right now. And it is really overwhelming. Oftentimes we're not even aware of all that we're carrying with us. So all of that compounds the anger that we feel, especially if we feel we shouldn't be angry. So again, I realize it's probably cliche if I just tell you anger is healthy, especially if it propels us to action. I do want to share one concrete thing that I have found helpful, because I can't necessarily do the action I want to do. Sometimes the action that anger propels us to do is go make peace. Sometimes it propels us to have conversations we might not otherwise want to have. Sometimes it propels us to go march in the streets. All of those may be curtailed by the moment we find ourselves in. And I think that's one reason I'm so grateful that I can go outside and I can make things. For me, that's one way that I'm coping with my anger, is driving it to creation, building stuff. Doesn't even necessarily have to be awe-inspiring, amazing stuff. Just putting pieces of lumber together. Yesterday I built a rocket stove, and it felt like I have to do this. I have to build something. And I really prefer to do it outside, because that's one thing that I can channel my anger into, which is creating something that nobody can take away. That I'm going to create something that's going to bring me joy, and hopefully bring other people joy. A couple of weeks ago, I built a picnic table because I wanted a place for our family to be able to gather outside. So if there's one piece of advice I would give you, this is the way I handle my anger currently, is I'm just making the stuff. But your anger is okay. Your anger is acceptable, as long as it's not making you want to die. There are life-giving kinds of anger. And I hope that you are able to feel it, to channel it, and to have it be a life-giving force. Comments, questions, discussion?
Hey, so this is really it was really appropriate for like where we are right now. It's also appropriate for me in my life. Like people will tell me that I'm an angry person, but I was looking, I do this thing with words, and we've done it with a few words, but like when I think about weather and climate, like weather is that thing that changes constantly. Climate is, it's kind of stable. Happiness and joy, I look at those the same way. And when I think about anger, I think about being the difference between anger and not the clinical definition of mad, but just being mad. It's one of those things where you just kind of stuck there. And I realized that when you're talking about your blood pressure, I don't eat as well as I should. I know that I'm overweight, but my blood pressure is always kind of low. And it's low because when I get angry, I release it. I try to do it constructively. It may not always seem like I'm doing it constructively, but I do it constructively because I know that with my set of just life issues within my body, that stress is not good for me. It's not good for any of us. So before I let you stress me out, I'm gonna stress you back out. And sometimes it comes out in good ways, and sometimes it comes out in not so good ways. The other day, for people who live in Birmingham, I was coming out 3rd Avenue South, and 3rd Avenue South is a one-way that goes east to west. And if you catch the lights just right, you can go about 45, maybe 50 miles per hour down that road. Well, 3 blocks going 40 to 50 miles per hour, it goes by like that. And so like 3 blocks up, I saw this guy and his girlfriend. And by the time I got up to them, I realized that the girl had just walked down in the traffic and she thought it was funny. Like there were people swerving, trying to avoid her. And by the time I noticed that, literally she was within feet of my car. And one of my biggest fears is killing somebody while I'm driving, even accidentally, because that's a big burden to bear. My stress level went up to here. You know what I did? I made like 3 right turns and went back to her. And I let some words fly that I'm not really that proud of, but you know what? My stress level went down. And it wasn't just letting her have it. I told her, like, do you know what you're doing? Like, this is serious, and you're playing with your life, other people's lives, and this is not fun. Like, she thought it was funny. Her boyfriend was like, he was like trying to stop her. She thought it was funny. And that's not funny. And you'd be surprised how quickly a life can be taken like that. But when my stress level got high, I'm like, the only way I'm going to get this down, I need to go say some words to her. And right, wrong, and different, my stress level came down. And hopefully she learned something from this. Because it wasn't funny. She could have made someone have an accident. She could have made me have an accident. She could have been dead herself. And I just don't think that life and death situations are funny. Just like this whole COVID-19 thing that we're going through. I don't think this is funny at all. And it bothers me when I see people making jokes about it, like it doesn't exist. And, it's not funny because people are dying. People are absolutely dying. And so like and I said that to say this, you said that people say that if you're not outraged by what's happening right now, you're not paying attention, or you just don't care. That's what I look at when I see people like John Merrill. They just don't care.
Sure.
They know
Right.
what's going on, and they just don't care. And I don't know if they're even worth even my situational anger. I'm mad at them, but I don't know if they're even worth my situation anger, because for me to be angry about something, I got to care a little bit about it. I don't give 2 cents about them whatsoever. The last thing I wanted to say, while you were talking, I looked, and there's a passage in Hebrews 10:26, and then the New King James Version, it says, if we sin willfully after we have received knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for their sin. That's deep, because all of these people who are supporting the current administration, they may like it, but they know that this is wrong. And it really bothers me with the evangelicals, because they should know that what they're doing is wrong. They received the knowledge and they are still doing it which means they have decided that, you know what, whatever my reward is for this, which is not going to be good, I'm okay with it to achieve this nasty goal that they have. You know, and agree, we're all angry. I find myself angry most days about something, but I always try to find a way to release that anger from me. It's like tying up those burdens on someone else's neck. I'm not gonna let you tie your burdens around my neck. I'm gonna try to figure a way to put it back on yours.
I appreciate what you said about the difference between situational and the weather and climate, because I do think that's relevant. I would say I think there's different aspects to sort of this hydraulic notion of anger, that it builds up and I need to release it. I think some kinds of releasing can be good if they move you towards, communicating. But we know, for example, when parents spank their children, when parents who use corporal punishment spank their children, it actually makes them angrier. So if they spank their child in anger, they actually get angrier. And sometimes, when you yell at somebody, it actually makes you angrier. However, if you sit there and stew on it, there's good ways of communicating your anger. Like one of them is just telling people, I am angry. Because that's, in a way, that's more vulnerable than saying, you piece of garbage, you. But if you just what you did makes me angry, is a really good way to let that out. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Tony, I'm not having to deal with traffic. I'm still stuck at home and not leaving. I get angry watching TV and seeing all the ridiculous crap going on politically. But the thing that has gotten to me more than anything else is the response of people that at one time I respected and loved and had a very high opinion of. This week, I had posted something about Trump's antics, and a guy I went to high school with that I haven't, you know how every now and then something on Facebook shows up from somebody you haven't heard from in forever? Okay. Well, all of a sudden, here was this guy that had been a very good friend who was defending Trump. The first thing he posted was, Paula, judge not that ye be not judged. And I posted, by the way, he is a Baptist preacher. I posted back, by your fruits ye shall.
In the world.
Huh?
That makes all the sense in the world since you said that.
Well, I posted back, by their fruits ye shall know them. But then we got into it, and I ended up telling him I could preach just as good as he could and unloaded a sermon on him. And it felt good until a few hours later. And then I stewed about it for 2 days. And there was temporary relief, and then there was, what good did it do? It didn't change him at all. Mm-hmm. I have been dealing with anger 2 ways. Neither probably are very healthy. First of all, I'm using profanity a whole lot more than I ever have in my life. Right. And I don't have a problem with profanity when it's used correctly. It should be. I have a theology of profanity.
Right on.
Like I had mentioned a few weeks ago, Paul used it a couple of times, but he didn't use it constantly, so that when he did use it, it really got people's attention. And I think that's, I think it should be for emphasis. When nothing else is getting somebody's attention, it ought to. But shoot, if I had to go out into the world these days, I might totally shock somebody by my language, because I'm getting so used to it after all these months at home. And the other way, I'm a reader anyway, but I have totally moved into a fantasy world a lot of times. I can get so involved in a book that, you forget there's any life going on around you. I could live at Hogwarts and be totally happy. And yeah, reading's a good thing, but I think I may have carried it to the extreme recently.
Can I share a couple of things? I think
Lexi has her hand up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, hey, okay, I'm so sorry. I should know how to turn my video on and I just don't see how to do that. So, if you want to enable me, I'd be happy to accept the video.
Are you on your computer or on the phone?
You can't hear me either?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, thanks.
Are you on your computer or are you on your phone? Oh, there you go.
Hello. Good morning.
Hey.
So some of the encouragement that I got from Dave and Tony and Paula is, one, as a white woman, often we're told to be seen and not heard. And that Paula is out there, you know, cursing up a storm or whatever is a direct contradiction to this, especially Southern women that we have been raised in, that she can even have a voice and that people are hearing it. There's everything about Paula that's a contradiction that I appreciate very deeply. So thank you, Paula. And the same goes for Tony, that he turned his anger. It was an anger out of care, of preserving lives.
Right.
And that's that same type of, you know, I think godly parental anger of get out of the street, literally. Stop playing in the street. That we should.
A couple more words I added into that, but you're on the right track.
So, and a conversation that I've recently had with someone about anger is, I just feel like we're kind of just throwing up on each other, that we're literally just like, we've got all this stuff in us and every now and then we just, you know, explode. And it's just like vomit. We're just like vomiting on each other with this stuff. And we don't even sometimes know where it's coming from, but a lot of it does come from different oppressions that this pandemic has maybe, because I've been part of my prayer is, God, where are you in the pandemic? God, help me see you in the pandemic, because he's promised to be with us no matter what. So that the pandemic is part of the no matter what. And so it's like, God, where are you? Please reveal yourself in this. And I feel like maybe he's trying to give us space and put us all in a pandemic timeout to give us space to think and turn to those who we do have those trusted environments, to maybe have some of those vomiting experiences or some of those cussing experiences or whatever, to have that anger, because we've all had a lot beat into us societally, that to help other people, maybe we need to get out. And so I've been trying with that anger too. And it's really hard when there's not a physical outlet. So I appreciate what you said about the table, Dave, and like, you know, building things to just, you know, is there a tree I need to cut down somewhere, or yard work or somewhere, so that I'm not cutting people down.
Yeah.
But, you know, every time I see, you know, there was a speaker this last week where they had 4 young white women speak about getting accredited in my PR profession. And, you know, I just wrote them an email and I said, you had 4 people on a panel and I'd see one demographic represented here. Can't we do better? Because I know we can, because I know that there are men and I know that there are people of color who hold this credential who can also speak to it. So when you put 4 panelists that are all, you know, about the same age and they're all white and they're all women, you know, you have to ask, how blind or how wittingly or unwittingly blind are you to this? It's really hard. So I appreciate you. And I got all kind of negative. I had no allies. I sent that to 12 people, and I had 2 women of color reply back and say, thank you, I'd be happy to help. But everyone else would.
Yeah.
And so, no white allies, I should say.
Right. I really appreciate. I think one of the things you brought up, you alluded to this, is who's allowed to express anger, and what we consider, what kinds of anger we consider acceptable. I think that was one thing you brought out that I really I think is something important to bring to the discussion. Another thing is, I didn't say this earlier, but there's a sense in which responding immediately out of anger, blowing up at somebody, is actually not experiencing the anger. So one of the things about like taking a breath or counting to 10 or whatever, to get your thoughts in order, is to actually recognize that you are angry and to feel it completely before you react. And that's one thing I think, if I'm able to detect the source, like where is this anger coming from? What am I responding to? For example, like when you wrote the email, that was anger that drove you to address an injustice, but you had to take some time to compose the email. And you probably didn't start off by saying, listen, you lousy so-and-sos. It was, this is something I'm concerned about. And you lay it out there. I'm sorry that you didn't get the response that would have been helpful to you.
Did you expect her to get the response that she thought was going to be helpful? Certainly not. Certainly not.
Well,
I knew where she was going when she started.
Well, I was trying to be an ally to the two persons of color.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to know they weren't alone.
And they appreciated that, Stacey. Unfortunately, that does not happen very often. I want to talk about that in a second, but there's a question in the question and answer from Jessica. It says, I think it's just important that our anger is targeted towards what we are angry about and not projected onto others or things unwittingly. And that's, a lot of times when people are angry, we take out our anger on everything. Like, just turn the table over because it's just there,
Right.
Throw your phone across the room. I was watching the TikTok video where there was like the worst choir director ever, and this was a meme, but literally one of my good friends was that choir director. Like, I remember one day he threw a hymnal at us because we can hit notes that were way out of our range. But yeah, it's very important to make sure it stays targeted.
Yeah.
Stacey, you said like, where's God in this environment? And I think we sometimes we have to look. Not really, I don't look easy for him. I think when we try to take a hard look for where he is in this environment, we'll miss it. It's like missing the forest for the trees. I see God in this environment when I wake up every day and I'm in my right mind and I'm still, COVID free, when I can breathe. Like, when you get that tickle in your throat and you think, oh God, it got me, and then you realize, oh, it's just my allergies. There's God in those moments. I tell people, like, just as a personal witness, COVID-19 has been a horrible thing for the world, but it has birthed so many things in me. I remember last year, while we were still meeting live, I think it was in the fall, Dave did this sermon talking about birthing and what comes when things are birthed. And maybe there will be multiple births out of this, but like for me personally, like I've reconciled relationships with family members. I reconcile family relationships with friends. I mean, there was a part of me with my family where I just didn't want to talk to them. And then when I realized I can't see them, it became more important that we talked, and the things that we were angry about were no longer that important. Mm-hmm. I wrote a book during this time. And I think sometimes we look for the big burning bush things when really it's just the sun that's rising that we need to see and we need to appreciate. And I think that will lower our stress about this as well, because a lot of times I do think we expect God to be this magical, bam, there goes some bread, bam, there goes some fish, when it's really like, hey, can I have some of this bread and fish you got? And it's shared with us.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
When you were talking about directing our anger appropriately, I think Jonah wanting to die, like that's my trick, is to, I'm pissed off, so I want to die, or like I'm better about that now. But just I'm so mad that I am the worst person in the world, and like that's one way that happens, and that's what Jonah's doing.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you using the Jesus verse, because that is super. I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but that was used against me anytime I was angry growing up. And I remember getting really mad at my brother, and my mom throwing a funeral for my brother because I was angry at him and told me that I had just killed him. And I had a funeral. Yeah, it was really messed up. So I got some real confused emotions that come with anger, maybe as a result. It was one of the more twisted punishments I ever got. And he was like, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I don't know why she did that to you. I know you were just mad at me. But see, I do think that like Christians are told you're not supposed to be angry, especially women. You're not supposed to be angry. So like, it's easier to just, I want to opt out. And it's really, really hard right now. And I'm a bit jealous of you, Tony, because my family situation has kind of gone the exact opposite of what you're describing. So not everybody, but there's certain people that have just been like, we're not going to agree on this because we don't give a crap about you. And that really, really sucks. And that's really, really hard. And I wish I were only angry at the system, but I'm angry at some people that I care very deeply about right now. And that's really, really hard.
Sure. Can I share also in that story, one thing I didn't bring out, it's interesting because Jesus says, he talks about anger, but then he says, if when you're offering your gift at the altar, you realize that your brother or sister has something against you, it's not you have something against your brother or sister, right? So in a way, it's really, and what that helped me do recently was look at this as it's not the person who's angry. So he's not addressing the person who's angry, he's addressing the person who's the object of the anger and saying, you need to go make things right with this person who's angry at you. And so both his illustrations are not with your anger, it's with the other person's anger. And I think that was like eye-opening for me, because this interpersonal, it's not putting all the weight on the person who's angry, is what I'm saying.
Dave, I was, Teresa, your situation, you have such a kind spirit, and I like being around you makes me feel better, because we're like sometimes like polar opposites. Like you're just so calm all the time, and I think that a lot of times, like, people say that people use the Bible to control people, and they do it all the time. They make us feel angry feel guilty about being human, and anger is a human emotion. And I think that what we fall short is that, let's just say you're angry at your mother or your father. The people who use the Bible to stop you from being yourself will say, well, the Bible says to honor your mother and father, but they took it right out of context and don't go to the next verse that says, and mothers don't provoke your children to wrath. So, I'm going to honor you until you provoke me to wrath, because I read the Bible. And once you provoke me to wrath, you're going to get this smoke. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who it is. You're gonna get the smoke, and again, it's one of those things where they're telling you it's okay for them to treat you like dirt, but you can't get mad about it, and you absolutely can. And you can use that anger to move either to a path of reconciliation, or sometimes you just gotta cut them off. And I think I found my greatest peace is being able to cut people off and not being angry at them anymore. Because once you're gone, then you're pretty much gone. And I don't have to worry about that anger. I don't have to worry about these negative feelings I got about you. That's the kind I block people on Facebook all the time. And I block people on Facebook and I see them in public and they don't even want to speak. I'm like, this is just Facebook. I'm blocking you because you're stupid. And I don't want to hear every stupid thing that comes across your keyboard. So I'm doing this to preserve our relationship. Like literally, even people who are homophobic, I'm doing this to preserve our relationship, because you got some growing to do and I can't help you with that. So I'm just gonna just move you out of my view, so I ain't got to worry about dealing with you and your foolishness. And I think if more people would adopt that, a lot of our stress levels would go down when it comes to people, because we're all broken in some way. And the thing about it is recognizing your brokenness and how it doesn't fit in with someone else's brokenness.
Yeah. I posted in the chat, there's a video, some of you may have seen it. There's a song called Try Jesus, But Don't Try Me. So
one of the healthiest ways I have seen anger move toward healing, without mentioning names, when our children were very young, one of their grandfathers had this thing about, he thought the bigger you were, the healthier you were. And he loved the idea of having fat grandchildren. And every time they were at that grandparent's house, he would make them get on a scale and weigh. And our youngest daughter takes after her mother and tends to be a little bit round, and was always the heavier of the three in proportion to her height. Well, when she got into college, she developed anorexia nervosa, or anorexia bulimia, because she was having so many problems dealing with not being the skinny sister, and denied it for a long time. But she finally kind of broke down and called me and said, I need help. And I went and picked her up, and we went straight to a psychiatrist and started trying to work our way through it. And you don't have a whole lot of chance of ever healing from anorexia bulimia. It's a very low percentage of people who ever get over it totally. Her sister Lauren was not in town at the time. And when Lauren finally made it to town, she showed up in town with a brand new expensive scale and drove to the grandparents' house and said, you've had that old scale in your kitchen forever. I brought you a new one. Let me get rid of that one. And she took the old scale and picked up her sister and took her out to a place in the woods and got the scale out of the trunk and a sledgehammer and told Joanna to go at it. And Joanna beat that scale until there was nothing left of it. But I think that was such a wonderful catharsis to help her deal with the fact that it wasn't her fault that she had eating problems. It was what life had thrown at her growing up. And she has no problems with it now.
We have some responses in the chat to the discussion. Stacy says, to me, it seems Tony is talking about discernment and recognizing when you're connecting with those with ears to hear, let them hear, and when the person does not have ears to hear. And David Sr. says, I have a book, Say Goodbye to Your PDI, personality disordered individual. Tony's point is helpful. Sometimes we need to walk away quickly in silence.
Wow, thanks, because I thought I was doing things all wrong. Just trying to protect my peace.
I think that's a great thing. The some scriptures that don't get quoted often enough, I think, are when Jesus says, "Don't throw your pearls before swine." There's some people you just don't need to waste your time on. Absolutely.
You should have never taught me that. Never told me that quote. I use it all the time.
Yeah.
There's swine everywhere. Just keep your pearls to yourself.
Yep.
And, well, that's to me the that's that discernment that I'm constantly praying, wisdom and discernment. Lord, please give me more. Because then there's that parable. When is it fertile ground? When are you?
Right.
And so when Tony said, so Tony, when I sent that email, I had very low expectations. But what I did think is everybody's going to open it, because I've worked really hard in my career and accomplished some things. And I think whether it's convenient or not, there are some people who will listen to me, whether they agree with me or not. So I knew that I felt that my email would be opened. And maybe that would not create a big character change in those people. It also was a contradiction to what many are used to hearing. And maybe that's a new seed planted for the future, because sometimes I feel like you just have to speak up and say, you know what, I'm a white person and I'm not okay with this. And maybe they don't change anything, but right there, that's new information and it informs them going forward. And if they can hear that from other people, then, you know, it's causing a moment of thinking. It may not be a big culture change at that moment, but maybe it's a seed planted. Now, I don't know if that's naive or not, but that's my feeling.
After service, when we do the announcements, I'm gonna loop you back into this, because this is going on with something I'm thinking, and I've been trying to plan for the last year, but now since we're in this, is the perfect time to do it. But I will talk about it after service. But yeah, that's gonna be important. That's very important.
Well, I thank you all for a rich discussion and for your contributions. We're going to talk probably about some more emotional stuff and dealing with stress over the next couple of weeks in our worship time together. I don't want to cut anyone off if anyone has anything that they want to share before we move back to our liturgy.
I have a very quick question that has nothing to do with anything except for something you said.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of rocket stove was it? Was it cinder block?
Yeah. So actually, I used a 5-gallon bucket and used vermiculite and cement.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah,
All right.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah, it didn't quite turn out the way I wanted it to, but it hasn't cured yet, so I'll have to see if it works. For those of you who wondering what a rocket stove is, you can look it up, but it's essentially a something we're going to use for camping, but they use it in developing world countries so that people don't have to cook over open fires. And it's a fuel efficient way to cook using sticks for fuel. So anyway, it's been fun. Been fun getting my hands dirty. Well, we'll move back into finish our liturgy.
All right. Lord, use us to heal the broken systems. Equip us with the wisdom and foresight. May our lives interrupt injustice with your grace. Amen.
May the peace of the Lord Christ go with you, wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storm. May he bring you home rejoicing at the wonders he has shown you. May he bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors.
Dave, you might be on mute.
Oops, thank you. There was one more comment I had forgotten. It's in the Q&A instead of the chat from Jessica. She said, I think it's important that our anger is... Oh, we did that? My bad. Okay. So just a few announcements. We will not be having our Tuesday night gathering for St. Junia this upcoming week. We'll be out of town for a little bit, but we will try to resume that the following week. There is a study I'm thinking about doing. I shared this out on the newsletter a little while ago. Reverend Rene Auguste from South Africa, who I think brings a more global perspective on race and racism. And I thought that might be something interesting for us to listen to together. This would be a video and discussion kind of thing. So I'll try to get some more feedback on when might be a good time to do that and push that out next week. Other announcements or things we need to let the community know about? I know this picnic this afternoon. Okay.
Yeah, so like Birmingham Black Pride actually ends today. We did everything virtually. We are taking a chance and going out to Avondale Park with our individual families, with our individual picnic baskets, wearing your mask and waving at people. But also, Dave, I'm wondering if what you just said will go into what I want to do. I've been tossing around this idea of having a conversation about race with white people. Mm-hmm. And actually, have me facilitate a conversation about race with white people. The thing that Stacey said kind of resonated with me for a lot of different reasons. One of my things when I talk about marginalized communities, I say anytime a level of marginalization intersects with whiteness, because of the insidiousness of what whiteness is, and I hope y'all understand. I know you understand what I'm talking about, because whiteness was created. Like it was created. Like it just didn't exist. But because of the insidious nature of what whiteness is, anytime a minority or marginalized identity intersects with that, a lot of the people are like minorities when it's convenient, but they're white all the time and they benefit from white privilege. And when Stacey was talking about those 4 women, you know, they were like, I got invited to talk. So, you know, I'm important. How does she make this racist? You know, and there's things like that we don't really get. A couple of months ago, we did a podcast on my Let Me Say This, talking about what's normal and what's not. You remember? So like when you see 4 white people on any panel, because of the way that racism exists in this country, it always looks normal. Like there's nothing out of the ordinary about it. But the minute you have 4 minorities, 4 Black people, 4 Asian people on it, but they must just be talking about Black or Asian or whatever their level of marginalization issues are. Because it's like, we can't talk about anything else because only white people can talk about global issues. So I want to have a conversation that really digs down deep into that. And I don't know if that video that you're talking about can help facilitate that conversation. We probably need to look at it and see, but we definitely need to have this conversation. And right now, I think this is the perfect time to do it in lieu of everything that's going on right now.
Absolutely. We'll talk some more about that this coming week. Are there other announcements or things we need to let the community know? Okay. Well, we'll stop the stream in just a second. Those of you who are on Zoom, if you'll hang around for just a minute, we can have some in-church dialogue. I want to thank you, those of you who have been watching on Facebook or YouTube. If you would, just a reminder, let us know where you're watching from. That way we can count you, or like or comment on Facebook or YouTube. That will help us out. And you're always welcome to, of course, join on the Zoom link as well. But for those of you who are on the stream, thanks for attending. Go in peace.